Hey, come, sit with me for a minute. Let's just listen to the rhythm of the waves. It's just you and me here on the shoreline today. In this explainer, we aren't going to be dissecting cold, hard data or distant historical events. Instead, I need to share something deeply personal with you. I want you to imagine we're walking along this beach together right now, the gray clouds hanging low, that heavy salt in the air. This explainer, well, it's my own confession. It's a vivid recounting of a totally unprovoked emotional tempest I endured and the incredibly lonely aftermath that followed. It's really about how we weather the sudden hurricanes of human interaction and how we eventually find the strength to drop our anchor.
I was just lost in thought. I was tired from the continuous strive of trying. Have you ever had one of those days where just navigating your own mind feels like wading through thick mud? Before the storm even hit, I was already adrift. I felt trapped by my own efforts, almost like letting myself into situations like a snake wrapped tight around its prey. It's this intense, constricting feeling. But I wasn't the prey. I was the snake, completely exhausted by the very grip I was trying to maintain on my own life. My mind was heavy, it was burdened, and I was desperately seeking just a moment of release from this constant, suffocating exhaustion.
And then I actually found a fleeting clearing in the fog, a brief, sudden moment of peace. I had finally reached rendezvous point, clear and wanting of more to show in this life. Imagine walking out of a dense, dark forest and finally seeing the horizon. There was this desperate need for clarity in me, A yearning to be better, to do better, to have something meaningful to show for all that exhausting effort. It's that vulnerable breath you take when you think, okay, finally, things are going to be all right. The waters had calmed down. The sky was breaking open, and it was precisely in this delicate, hopeful state of wanting more from life that I was entirely unprepared for what happened next.
But the sky doesn't stay clear. It never does when you let your guard down entirely, does it? A voice cut through my peace like a shimmer. It wasn't even calling onto me directly at first, but it became this sudden, violent trigger that was finally let loose. Suddenly, I was thrust into absolute chaos. It was an unprovoked verbal attack, just a complete outpouring of garbaging pain and uncontainment. Imagine the sky instantly blackening, the wind howling out of absolutely nowhere. There was no buildup, no warning rumble of thunder at all. Just the immediate, deafening roar of someone else's storm violently crashing right into my fragile calm.
The really terrifying part was the speed of it all. It happened in less than 3 seconds. Literally. 1 second, a trigger let loose. 2 seconds, her garbaging pain spilling over. 3 seconds, hailing out all anger and resentment. 3 seconds. That is barely enough time to draw a breath, let alone process an attack. I didn't even get a chance to look at her or say a single meaningful word. The onslaught was so rapid, so torrential, that it completely bypassed any logical defense mechanisms I had. It was a total emotional flash flood.
And because I had absolutely no time to react, the impact was profoundly visceral. The pain and heavy resentment in her voice sent sharpened arrows to an already bruised heart. And I think that's what made it so devastating. I wasn't wearing a shield of iron. My heart was already bruised, still recovering from heavy blows I had taken way earlier in life. So when those arrows hit, they pierced deeply. It was this raw, physical sensation of an emotional wound tearing right open. Imagine standing on the shore, already battered by the tide, only to be struck by a rogue wave that pulls you under before you can even brace your legs.
In that split second, I was instantly torn in two. Inside, it was an agonizing effort to shoulder down my inside pain, to storm down all the courage I had muscled up. I was trying to contain a hurricane of devastation. But outwardly, well, I had no time to turn and react, so I chose to simply leave the moment as it was, like the passing sun over the sea. It's an incredibly painful display of outward composure. The restraint required to stand entirely still while a storm just ravages your insides is immense. I let the verbal assault pass over me, refusing to feed the tempest, even as it tore my newly found peace to absolute shreds.
As I finally walked away, the pace of the entire world seemed to slow down. But putting distance between us didn't mean healing. The memory painfully burned at the thought. It was slowly shimmering away at the back of my head, like melting ice to a hot iron. It is such a visceral, burning sensation, It's not a dull ache. It's an active, hissing, destructive pain. As we walk along this lonely beach together right now, I can honestly still feel that phantom heat, that lingering, searing trauma of being struck down when I was completely defenseless.
In the absolute quiet that followed, only one agonizing, solitary question remained echoing in my mind. Whatsoever did I do to her? It's the desperate plea of a mind just trying to find logic in a totally illogical attack. We search for a reason, right? A justification, something we did wrong. Because, well, if it was our fault, at least it makes sense. At least we have some control. But I had to yield to the silence. I realized that only the unseen ancestors know. Maybe I'll find out in the next life. I was just forced to carry this unanswerable question. Sometimes the hardest part of surviving the storm is accepting that the storm didn't happen for a reason. It just happened.
Stripped of answers, I was left feeling incredibly vulnerable. I resolved to forgive myself, to try and stay in the know. But the isolation was just haunting. I felt like an unnoticed wind blowing past a shivering, lonely, naked man. You are freezing, exposed, entirely stripped of your defenses, and the world just keeps blowing past you, totally unnoticed. Finding self-forgiveness when someone else has literally poured their resentment over you is a bitterly cold, lonely walk. You have to generate your own warmth when the world around you refuses to offer any.
And this brings me to the core of what I wanted to share with you in this explainer today, the anchor. You see, I used to think of an anchor as a heavy burden dragging me down, but I had to redefine it entirely. I realized that till then, I will forcefully smile like an anchor at sea, ready to stop the moment with ease of movement. The anchor is quiet, immovable strength. It is the absolute grit to force a smile in the face of the raging weather. It's the profound, self-forgiving realization that even when the sea is incredibly violent and unpredictable, you can drop your weight into the depths and hold your ground. You don't have to fight the waves. You just have to outlast them with ease of movement.
So our walk on this beach is kinda coming to an end. I've taken you from my exhaustion through the sudden storm of another person's anger to my shivering acceptance of the aftermath. I share my confession with you today because I know life pretty much guarantees that at some point, a sudden squall is going to catch you off guard too, bruising an already tender heart. So I want to leave you with this to ponder. When your unprovoked storm hits and the cold wind blows past you, where will you look for your quiet strength? How will you find your anchor?